Nice, guys.
Yo, that was
Thank
dope.
you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Indeed. Good stuff. How's everybody doing?
Pretty good. How are y'all doing?
Good.
Good.
Are the masks noisy?
Oh,
I don't know if we
good.
can hear you as well, but
All right, let me bring it up here. There. How's that?
yeah.
That should work.
Great.
Good. So tell us what you were doing.
Sweet. So we had, I can just bring the camera down actually. So I had this little Eurorack system here, and we had marbles sending out gate, and I just had that molted, and then that's going to both of the bloopers. So that's giving us like a master clock so that both of us could freely loop, but like be in sync with each other, but have our own like systems tied together via CV. Okay. And then with my situation, I had the modular going into the blooper, which was then running into the mood. So I was able to like latch onto things that were happening with the loop here with the micro looper, and then also run that all through the live effects on this side. And then that was just going into a channel on the mixer. And then with Tyler's setup, he has the stereo outputs from the Reface DX. One's going into the blooper, and then one's going into the mood. So he's actually doing two separate loops here. One that's out of time with the master clock, and then one that's in time with me. So we were just kind of fading in loops that were either in time with each other, out of time with each other, textural or melodic, you know.
Very cool.
Thanks.
Oh, I lost my mouse here. Okay. There we go.
really dope stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I gotta tell you, I feel like, well, firstly, I want to get to the story of Chase Bliss, but I just want to say, I feel like blooper and mood are another category of pedal. I don't feel like it's just the, I don't even say humdrum because there's a lot of great pedals out there, but I just don't feel it. It almost feels like, this is so much more than a pedal. And I love the way you guys kind of put so much into it. But before we go through all that, I know I kind of want to know, and I know Shonda probably wants to know, what's the background of Chase Bliss?
Yes.
Like, how did Chase Bliss sort of come about?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So Joel Cordy, who's the owner and CEO of Chase Bliss, he started it in about 2014. He was working for another pedal company in Minneapolis called Zvex Effects.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Totally. And he was one of their engineers there for a long time, and then just kind of started developing his own ideas and moved to trying to like start his own company. And that was around 2014 that he did that.
I wonder, did he work on this?
Which one's that? Oh, yeah. So he made the instant lo-fi.
Yeah.
Corey, hold it up again. Corey.
Instant lo-fi chunky.
Instant lo-fi junkie. Yeah, he developed that in like 2010 or something like that. And then the Eurorack version, I think he helped do like the circuit board design maybe, but
nice.
That was his like original design was that.
Very cool. This is a dope module too, and I kind of get those vibes from, but even better from Warped Vinyl.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
That was definitely kind of like the evolution of that instant lo-fi junkie circuit into Warped Vinyl, and then kind of going through all the different versions that we've released now. That's kind of, it was the first pedal that Chase Bliss released as well, and Joel's kind of always tweaking that circuit. And one of the big aspects of Chase Bliss as well is Joel is always really listening to a lot of customer feedback and always wanting to redesign things and trying to, learn from what he's done before. So that pedal in particular, because it was the first one that he released as Chase Bliss, is a circuit that he's worked on for like a pretty long time now at this point.
So so you're saying warped vinyl. I'm going to show everybody just so they can see the pedal too.
Oh, she's pulling up.
Yeah. So the first one that Joel released was the first pedal he released in like 2014 or so, was the Warped Vinyl. And that was the first pedal that featured all of the things that kind of Chase Bliss is known for, with the dip switches that allow all of the different expression control over any parameter, and just the whole kind of idea of providing as much functionality as possible over like an original analog design. And then that evolved into the Warp Vinyl Mark II, which we released, I think, in like 2015 or
2015, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see if I got one.
Yeah, I think Zach has one here potentially. So that one we released, again, based on user feedback, where people just kind of had some things that they wanted a little bit differently about it. So Joel took a lot of that stuff into consideration, and eventually re-released the pedal as the Mark II, which added a bunch. I think it added MIDI control at that point, and at that point we had also moved the dip switches. They were originally actually on the bottom of the pedal, so they were kind of hard to access from a pedal board. But yeah, here's the Mark II. So
nice.
That's one that that Joel is really proud of, and definitely has like a pretty unique character to it. And then we released
again.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
I want to zoom in so everyone can. Very cool.
Nice.
So yeah, that was the Mark II, and then the one that we're selling currently is the Warp Vinyl Hi-Fi, which is is again based on feedback. Yeah, that's the one that Corey has down there. Yeah.
Yeah, we were originally selling it in this copper finish, and then we started doing it in the black because everybody wanted the black one.
Yeah, so that was, I think, the first maybe 1,000 or so were copper, and then we went to black after that.
And I gotta speak on
that packaging.
The packaging is nuts.
Yeah,
Jealous. Let me, Corey, hold that up so I can.
Do y'all know the story about that too, or no?
Very cool.
Yeah, so Joel was doing that for a long time, and his parents are retired, and they were helping him stain and stamp all these boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And we were doing it for a real long time, and we just stopped doing it last year because, they're retired folk and they want to be retired.
They're like, son, stop putting us to work.
They were doing it for free, and it was just becoming like this. It was becoming like an actual job at this point, where it was like, man, we're being held up on production because like we were just asking them to do so much, making these boxes for us, and like they were so generous, and it just got to the point where we were like, man, we have to make a tough decision and either like raise the price, which is already so hard to do because they're so expensive, or it was like, just kind of go in a different direction. And we have a little kind of documentary that we actually made up that's on our website underneath the blog, that goes into it and kind of explains the whole process. So if anyone's interested in a little in-depth thing, we do have that on our website as well.
Hell yes, I'm gonna check that out.
Nice.
Yeah. I'll drop your website in the chat
awesome.
too. So
thank you so much.
So then he came from Zivix, did the Lo-Fi Junkie, and then decided to do his own company. Did he form the company by himself, or was it partners? Or
no, he started by himself, and he was just working out of his basement for a while. And then that's where I met him, because I was interning at Zvex at the time, and I tried to get a job there, and I couldn't. And then at the end of my internship, I was just working my butt off, and I was like, man, can I get a job here? And they're like, no, but you should hit up this guy who used to work for us. He might need some help or something. So then I cold called Joel, and then he just happened to need somebody to stuff boxes.
Perfect.
Yeah, it worked out really nicely for me. But
so you cold called him and he was like, hello, my name is.
And then he didn't believe me. He was like, why wouldn't they hire you? Why would I hire you if they wouldn't hire you? I had to like convince him. But yeah, so it was just him at the time, and he had one guy who was helping him just like fold manuals and test pedals for a little bit, but he was like always out of town and busy. So that's where I stepped in and started helping him with doing all the operations and stuff. And then from that point, we had a series of employees that worked out and didn't, and moved out of his basement into a shop a couple of years ago. So now we have like a brick and mortar spot where we do all of our operations from now, and that's where Tyler and Tyler joined here.
Okay.
Very nice. Yeah.
That is a really cool journey. I mean, and it seems that you guys made it possible by just making high quality, really fun pedals. And it's not just rehashed sort of stuff. It's really, even a reverb and delay is kind of like a total spin on what they could do, and it's very high quality. So what's is that kind of the philosophy to kind of, you know, here's the thing. If I go to restaurants, sometimes you go to restaurants like, oh, it's just fried chicken. They're like, no, this is gourmet fried chicken. It's just fried chicken punched up.
Right.
I feel like that's kind of the philosophy. You guys are like, we're going to make pedals, but yo, we're going to make pedals.
Joel's a critic. He's got opinions. Like, he doesn't want anything to, you know, he wants it to be like interesting to him. If it's not interesting to him, he doesn't care about it.
A big thing too is he doesn't really want to, you know, put something out there if he already feels like there's something out there that fills that need.
Exactly.
And that's what kind of the whole philosophy with our whole control scheme being, with like every parameter being controlled by expression or CV or MIDI, and you can save all these presets. And you know, like I actually, like when I started too, like I actually don't play guitar. I only play keys. So for me, like a big selling point was being able to use expression and CV and all this stuff where my synths can be compatible with it, and I can change presets on the fly with my synths and my pedals, and like everything just works really quickly and easily. So I think it definitely is in that mentality where we don't want to limit the user at all. You know, we just want them to be able to have as much control and as much freedom over like whatever the design idea is, you know.
So let me ask you guys a question then. So when you're talking specifically like about the pedal, the blooper, and the mood, just for those who are new to hearing about what you guys do, can you give like a little, just kind of explain what the mood does and in the parameters, and then also explain the blooper, just for everybody that's kind of tuning in right now.
Yeah, totally.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do mood. Yeah. So mood is an interesting one for us as well, because it's kind of built around this dual channel platform that we originally developed with Brothers, which is our analog gain stage pedal. And Brothers, you can do, it's 2 channels that are boost, drive, and fuzz. You can stack into each other. And that was like one of the first collaborations that Joel did as well. And we've kind of gone a lot into that collaboration mentality, especially with the digital pedals that we've done. So the first digital pedal that we did was right before Mood. It was Dark World. And that was a reverb that we did in collaboration with Keeley and Cooper FX. So that idea kind of opened up a whole new world for us in terms of being able to do digital stuff where we can collaborate with these other designers. You know, we don't actually have like a digital designer on our staff. Joel's big specialty is doing analog circuitry. So it's nice for us to be able to reach out to people that we're close with and Joel's friends with, and that they can do cool stuff, and we can just end up making something that's really cool together. So Mood kind of came out of that mentality where it was like Joel and we also are really good friends with the guys over at Old Blood Noise, and they designed one side of Mood, and then the other side was is David Rollo of Drolo FX or Jolo Pedals, who we kind of just met by reaching out because we really liked his stuff. He makes a pedal called Stammen that's really cool, and one called Molecular Disruptor that does all this interesting kind of like customizable stuff. And
yeah, Drolo stuff's awesome.
It's really, really cool. And he's just a one-man operation doing it by himself out in Belgium. And it was just really inspiring to talk to him. And so Mood kind of came about as this just kind of spirit of collaboration where it was like, we want to make something fun and interesting. We want to make it where it's immediate. And it also worked out because it just fit into the hardware platform that we had kind of designed for Dark World. So we were able to reach out to these designers who were already familiar with working in that kind of structure, and they were able to just really easily kind of just, there it's popped up there. So the whole left channel is actually the whole like the left side where the left foot switch and those 2 left knobs and that left like 3-way toggle there is all the controls over the kind of like spatial effects side. So those were 3 effects that were designed by Old Blood Noise. One is like a multi-tap delay that you can smear into this big spacious reverb. One is just a really clean digital delay that you can lock into like a loop, so it won't like self-oscillate and run out of control. It just like locks into a loop, so you can kind of do this like secondary looper thing with it. And then we have this like pitched delay mode called slip mode, where it's just kind of this like variable speed buffer thing where you can do cool pitch delay. And then the other side on the right is 3 micro loopers that David Rollo designed. One is a stretch mode where it'll just take your loop and kind of like smear it out into this cool stretchy reverb thing. Tape mode where you can do different kind of like speed and direction modifiers on like a short little loop, and then an envelope mode where there's actually like an envelope that you can trigger to kind of like freeze your loop and do this kind of like stutter mode. But the real magic is that it's all controlled by this universal clock in the middle. So this universal clock allows you to actually control the like sample rate of the pedal, and you can, if you have it turned up all the way, you get shorter loops, but everything's really clean and pristine. But then you can turn it down really low and get this cool like lo-fi loops, and the whole idea is you can just kind of like mess with audio, and it's organic, and it changes on the fly, and just does kind of like cool unexpected things.
Very cool.
Nice. It is very cool.
Somebody was saying in the chat that they're hearing a lot of synth guys talk about mood.
Yeah, definitely, and that's I use it a lot. You know, when I play synth stuff, and it's an interesting one, just with the ability to control everything with expression. Again, you can control clock on the fly, and I forgot to mention that the clock is quantized as well to fifths and octaves, so it stays very musical the whole time. Really, no matter what you're doing, it fits well into a lot of people who are doing kind of like ambient synth music, because it kind of like plays with you. It can surprise you in a lot of ways, and just kind of like point you in a direction that you might not normally go.
Really nice. And so then Blooper, on the other hand.
Yeah, so with Blooper, the idea there is what we wanted a looper that was able to, instead of just having one layer of, you know, recorded audio with, you know, overdubs over the top of that, we wanted to have a way that you could record multiple loops to the same, you know, loop length, and be able to fade in and out of them, and tear apart the loop and change the speed and add a bunch of effects and have that be, you know, the loop. It's like the recording of the loop's the beginning of the process. It's not the end destination. Like, you record whatever audio you want into it, and then you mess it up a bunch, and then have that kind of be the new loop. You know, it's you're falling down a hole via a looper, you know.
Nice.
So like the idea there is, you know, you have the layers knob, and what that's doing is it's switching between however many layers you've ended up recording. So you set your time of your loop length with the first recording that you do. And then every recording after that gets saved as a new layer that you're then able to, you know, turn the knob and scan back through. And that can either have the old recorded audio on it, or it could get rid of that old audio and just be its own distinct layer of whatever sound was on there. And then we have a repeats control that sets how quickly it fades out. So if you're recording new loops as a new layer, your old loop can, you know, start to lower in volume, which is nice for when you're setting like more distinct loops to happen on new layers. But it's also a nice extra feature for when you have a shorter loop length. You can also use Blooper as a delay pedal. So you can just continually record over your loop length, and then just have that repeats knob almost be like a regen control on a delay.
What's really cool then too is you can add any of the modifiers that we have on Blooper, where we have these different like pitch modifiers and like this one called Scrambler. You can add those then to your delay signal and get kind of like weird pitch delay and all these weird kind of like affected sounds as well. Yeah,
and there's like a filter that can go between high pass and low pass, so you can have that affect your delay and get like analog kind of like you know, tapered audio in that way. There's a stability control which affects like the age of the tape, if you will. So it's like, you know, you get warbling, you get noise, and you get filtering that would be in the same realm as like a broken tape machine. So as you turn it up, it's getting more and more messed up. And then
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's great. It's nice, especially with something like this, and, you know, be able to sync them up too. You have like CV control on it, and it's CV sync.
How long can the recordings be?
32 seconds. But
wow. Okay.
And there's 8 layers, so, you know, you're able to get a 32-second loop. If you get rid of all that audio, you can have another 32-second loop, and, you know, you're able to switch between them all seamlessly. So instead of having like a really long loop length, like something like Ditto or something can do, we wanted to rein in and really focus on that layers knob being an integral part of the design, where you're able to scan through multiple recordings.
That's very cool.
Thanks.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, and I mentioned it kind of before the show. I think so which is the biggest seller, Blooper or Mood? Or are they both like pretty? I imagine they're both pretty big sellers for you.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm the sales manager. Mood, since we released it June, I think like 20th last year or something around there. It's actually our best-selling pedal to date. So it's sold better than anything we've ever released, which was definitely surprising for us because it's kind of, like the most atypical Chase Bliss pedal
Right.
to date. It's digital, it does all this weird stuff, but like, it's a really fun pedal, and we're really stoked on it. We're just, it's awesome that it's been selling so well. But Blooper, we actually just went to the end. We just finished the end of our like initial production run, and Blooper was
Nice.
a little bit weird as well because we initially released it as a Kickstarter. When we did it last fall, we were in a position where we just either needed to take out a loan, or we were in the middle of developing Blooper, and we're also about to release a new pedal called the Automaton Preamp Mark II. It's a collaboration with Benson Amplifiers. It's like a whole new series that has, we announced it at NAMM a couple of years ago. It has like motorized faders, and I think Zach has one actually. I think he can run upstairs and grab one. We're really excited about it. And actually, Corey, I think I talked to you at NAMM about the reverb that we're doing.
That thing sounds amazing.
Yeah. So we're doing a reverb collaboration with Maris pedals. It's called the CXM 1978, and it's in the new like motorized fader platform. So anyway, at this time last fall, we've been in the development.
It's amazing.
It's gonna be. We're really excited, but yeah. So we've been like developing these products for like a couple of years at this point, and when we released Blooper, we were just like we needed some cash essentially, and so we decided to do a Kickstarter, and people were really generous and backed it for us, and it was really successful. So that was the initial release. Now it's like a full production model like any of our other pedals.
Yeah, here's the preamp. So
let me zoom you in here one moment.
Totally. It'll be a little bit different. Right now, I don't have the wood. There's going to be some wood sides on the side. That'll look really nice. But this is a prototype.
Nice.
Partially working. We're getting to the bottom of it.
We're getting really close to release. We were initially hoping
so
for the end of May, but with everything going on, it's a little hard to predict right now. So it's still coming out though. We're very close to the finish line.
Very cool. So the one thing that kind of stands out, well, one, when Mood was released, it was kind of left field. So I think it was just kind of like, what is this? You know what I mean? And the more we saw the demos, the more, like, I could definitely tell you, my inner circle, there was a lot of talk about it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna tell you that the circle of folks that we chat with every day on text or Marco Polo is kind of like a who's who of some of the online stuff. So it was a lot of talk about it there for a minute. And then when you guys did Blooper, and then but you did like an episodic sort of situation with Nas, right? Talk about that a little bit. I thought that was so dope. I was literally kind of nerd watching and kind of like, yo, when's the next episode?
Totally. And that was such a funny situation because it was like, it was so last minute. Like we were at NAMM and we had been working on Blooper for a long time. This wasn't last NAMM, but the previous one. And it was the night before NAMM, and we just had like an almost not working prototype of Blooper, and nobody knew about it. And we were like, should we even show it? Like, is this, we should maybe just wait until next year or something. And then we were just like, you know what? Let's just like show it to people and be upfront and be like, this thing doesn't work. We don't know what we want it to do yet. We want your input on it. And we want to like show you the process of like us learning how to build a loop pedal.
I think that was brilliant, quite frankly.
Yeah, it was so scary for us to just like show up at NAMM and like not have a
Hey guys, we got a thing.
We have an idea.
Like record audio, kind of, and that was it. And then from there, it was, you know, we started off each episode as just being like an introduction to what the general idea of Blooper is, and then just going video by video and like asking for people's suggestions along the way and trying to implement them as we kind of could, and as they fit in with the general idea of what we were going for. And it's cool to see like the first episode of that Blooper reel, and seeing that like the knobs are labeled completely different things.
They all did completely different. Then there was a point when there was tape, and then there was a point like at the last couple of episodes, the whole thing got redesigned. This knob didn't do that anymore. This knob didn't do that anymore. Like I mean, it was kind of it was like really interesting. I can honestly tell you, I sat there watching like, holy crap, it's not what it used to be. And now it's something different. And, man, I wonder what they're gonna show us on the next episode.
Right? Yeah, and it was the point where like I think we were like 4 or 5 episodes in, and that was when we came to the conclusion like we had a mode to turn on modifiers. And we were like, this is so complicated. Like I'm messing up. I'm helping design this pedal, and I'm messing up using it. Like I can't imagine anybody else. So. Like 4 or 5 episodes in, we added the buttons, and that was just like the modifier buttons on the bottom.
That's right. That's right. Right. That's exactly right. And I remember looking at that too, thinking like, good choice, because that's just simple. Hit the button, it just makes sense. And yeah, I got a kick out of that kind of stuff, man. And I think, for in my mind, we have access nowadays to any and everything. There's no way of what world exists where you could know what Prince and Michael Jackson are doing, or what Roger Lynn was doing when he was doing it. Right. When he was designing the MPC, there's no way he's going to show you every step of the way and go through all that stuff. And then today is a very different thing. There's this exclusivity sort of thing. There's everything is subscription based, and everything it has everybody's got fear of missing out, the whole FOMO thing. And so this idea of being let in during development is like huge, and I think people would be amazed at how that draws people in. I was certainly drawn in. I mean, I'm still kind of excited by what you guys did.
Mission accomplished.
That's awesome, man.
We really wanted people to just feel involved and included, and like have their ideas kind of be heard by the people making the thing.
Yeah,
like it was the journey.
Yeah, exactly.
The journey. It was a really good way to engage people. And I think that's why when it all comes down to it, you guys had a lot of backing, because you were kind of guiding people in. It was like coming in for a visit with Chase Bliss every couple weeks.
Dang, that's so nice to hear. Thank you, man.
Yeah, very good stuff.
So I wanted to ask you guys, I know we kind of touched on it a little bit before, but how is it going in terms of let me rephrase. As times have changed over the years, and I see that we talked about the resurgence of synths and electronic music and things of those genres. How is that affecting pedals, like guitar pedals? I feel like more synth people are using them. Modular.
Yeah, it seems like something that more and more people are playing keyboard. You grew up playing keyboards. So.
Yeah. I mean, I don't actually play guitar, so like. I feel like I kind of approached the situation a little bit differently, which initially actually Joel was not going to even offer me a job, but I like kind of went to the shop and just like convinced him to give me a job. So it worked out well for me as well too. But, I was like, I provide a valuable perspective. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that we do is applicable for a lot of people. I'm into a lot of kind of like vintage keyboard stuff as well, and we make an EQ pedal called Condor, which is like an EQ filter, kind of like preamp pedal that with my Wurlitzer, whenever I'm recording, I always pull that out just because it's so useful in being able to just dial in exactly how I want it to sound. And also, when you start getting into the dip switches with that pedal, it becomes a really interesting multi-effect where you can use either the internal, like most of our pedals have, I think only one, Brothers doesn't, but most of our pedals have an internal LFO that you can use to modulate any parameter just on its own. So when you start getting into that with Condor, it becomes this like crazy analog multi-effect where you can use it as a tremolo, you can use it as a univibe.
You can do like Leslie stuff.
Yeah, kind of like pseudo Leslie stuff. You could use it as like a wah with an expression pedal. So
man,
that's one that whenever I'm recording with that, it's just like I pull that out every time because it can just do so many things. And then also with like the preset control that we have, every pedal can save up to 122 presets. So it's like it can do whatever you want it to for as long as you want it to, really. Situation. Yeah. And so I think that aspect of control really appeals to a lot of the synth players who are really like willing to spend the time to dive into stuff and kind of learn how stuff works. And a lot of guitar players are definitely attracted to the kind of like 3-knob 1-stomp switch thing. And that's awesome. There's a lot of those pedals are really, really good, but we just kind of have a different mentality where we don't ever want to like limit anybody. We just want to have it be like you have as much control as possible to do whatever you want with this effect, you know?
Nice.
And I guess
So just so you know, you just sold me Condor. So
oh shoot!
I was watching the video on it earlier.
Honestly, it might be my favorite pedal. It might be
Yeah.
Secret weapon pedal for sure.
I love that thing. Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, I guess for somebody like me, like I was more of a guitar player growing up, so I was always using guitar pedals, and I don't know where it happened. Like at what point I was like, okay, synthesizers, like I should get a synthesizer. And I got like a pocket piano and like figured it out from there. And then, you know, just kind of transcended into different synths and stuff. But I already had that mindset of using guitar effects to make my boring guitar more interesting. So like when I started getting into synthesizers, it was the thing that made my boring synthesizer more interesting, you know?
Yeah, no doubt.
Which is all my bad for making it boring, but
well, I mean, that's what's really dope about pedals and effects and stuff like that, because you know, not everybody's a virtuoso on everything that they touch. I mean, I'm no you know, concert pianist, but I love synthesizers, and as long as I can program stuff on it, as long as I can run it through effects, I can make amazing stuff. that's just it. And you see, I got no shortage of synthesizers back here, so
right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's really dope. Which is why I dig just different pedals and stuff that kind of has its own personality. I love things with its own personality.
For sure. What's y'all's take on that as far as like the, you know, the growth of synthesizers and, you know, just general music lately? Like it seems like something that y'all probably have your finger on the pulse on, you know? Like
yeah, I think for instance, I've seen this combination of modular synthesis and pedals, and I've seen that a lot, like a lot. I'll see people with where they're set up so that they're right near each other, and I mean, for people that don't think about it or people that may not realize it, I really think we're in like a resurgence or the golden era. We thought the golden era of synthesizers was like in the 70s or whatever it was when all the classics came out. But the reality is, yeah, those were the classics. That was just the inception of everything. But right now, we have more synths on the market. And if you think 10 years, 12 years back, it was not like that.
It was definitely a resurgence, you know.
There is a resurgence at big time. I mean, you know, it felt like at one point there was the Arturia Mini Brute or Micro Brute, and nobody was making analog keyboards except for like Moog or somebody like that. And there wasn't many, you know, if you wanted something classic, you had to go and search for it and dig through rubble somewhere. Drop a bunch of money. The aftermarket prices went crazy. And now it's at a point where you can pretty much have just about anything. And there's no shortage of reasonably priced synths out there. There's no shortage of expensive synths out there. Like there's everything from $299 to $3,000. Yeah. Well, when you think about the Moog to $8,000, $10,000, you know what I mean? So I think it's a really super cool time. And then I've been enjoying, and Shonda and I have been to places and actually taught synthesis and stuff. I enjoy seeing kids and seeing people that haven't been exposed to it learn it and kind of get familiar with it. And I think you see it in a lot of the music too. I mean, when I hear music even on TV, I'm like, there's a lot of synth music out there nowadays.
There was a comment in the chat too, and it's so true. I put it up. Not just a resurgence, but an explosion of advanced technology and halfway affordable, which is so true.
It's so true. It's wild. It's just it seems like the technology is just caught up to the point where like a lot of people are able to make really awesome sounding instruments and have them be stable and have them, you know, work really well. You know, there's just the history of like synthesizer design for people to build off from that. Yeah, it just makes way for a lot of awesome, affordable products for, you know, for people to get into synths if they've never gotten one before.
Yeah, and I think the just the availability of the technology is doing a few things. For the companies that have, the budget and the know-how to get things done and bring things to market, the advancements in technologies are magnificent. But then also the advancements in technology and the accessibility to the technology for those that don't have the means to make stuff, to manufacture stuff. You have so many people that are like just programming things in their rooms or on their laptops and able to bring that to different platforms and eventually make a new instrument out of it. And it's all the stuff that a lot of us sit around and think like, I wish I had this. So why doesn't that thing do this? And now people are able to kind of start exploring that stuff, the really astute ones. So yeah, this is like an incredible time right now. And I think with the pedals that you all are making, it's dope that they can kind of play both sides of the game, guitar or synthesizers. And, I know a lot of sound designers that use a gang of different pedals and stuff, and those are typically the secret weapons that you don't see.
Yeah.
So you guys and Chase Bliss pedals are contributing in a huge way.
No,
man, thank you.
There's another question actually in the chat. I'm going to throw it up there so you guys can see it. Curious if you thought of creating a way to attach a CV breakout patch bay pedal to take over the dip switches, maybe so modular can utilize a Logic CV or modules to control your pedals. That's actually a really good idea.
definitely.
Maybe Joel will give him a job too. He'll come down and make it.
You get a job. We definitely considered doing something like that, like having some CV source, if it's like an envelope generator that goes into the CV, or if it's a sequencer that goes into the CV or what. But that's another one of those things where, if there's already something out on the market that's doing it, Joel, he doesn't want to do that because there's already something there, and like we want to offer something new, and I think that just takes some time to develop.
Yeah, there's
something interesting.
We just recently saw a new thing. I think it's called the Wave Table. It's like a little LFO type generator thing. Somebody on on the Chase Bliss Facebook user group was posting about it, but and like I know the old EHX like 8-step sequencer can do a lot of really cool things. So it's something we have thought about doing, but Joel also really, his mentality is he always really likes to work on something if it's like exciting to him. So that's why we've been trying to get him excited about modular as much as possible, so that can catch. But
I sold him like 5 modules in a case just so that he had a system. This marbles I'm using is his marbles.
Okay. Well, he's got to know a little something about that anyway.
He does.
It's not his thing right now.
It's not really his wheelhouse, and he's not really like used to using that stuff. But a lot of like the music that we listen to when we're just like at the shop working, and the music that he likes is like all synth based, kind of like modular stuff. So it's like, man, we just like have to make the connection,
Yeah. No doubt. Well, yeah, I could tell you, I know there'd be tons of people that would love to have stuff like Mood and Blooper in a Eurorack version. Be crazy.
Yeah.
But even like you were saying before, though, I mean, it's really interesting to see people who are finding ways to utilize them even just in the pedal format,
Yep. And it's a lot of people are doing it, man. Like there's been stuff, I know a few sound designers, and there's been times when I'll be like, yo, that is how'd you do that? And they'll I'll let you in a little secret, and they'll like hold up a pedal, and it'll be some obscure pedal, and they'll be like, see, this is kind of the secret sauce. So don't talk about it on any of your shows.
Right.
Shove it under the table. So yeah, man, I think that's really dope. I'd love to see you guys get into modular stuff. I always kind of fathomed that. I always thought that would happen at some point anyway.
Yeah, I think it, at some point or another, it'll probably happen. It's just, when the time's right, when the cards are right, when we have things that are, it's weird having this like new pedal format be a thing, because it is something that we care about a lot, but it just takes up so much time to, make sure that it's perfect, before we release it. So once that's all rolling, who knows, maybe we'll get into a new format. If that's Eurorack compatible, or if that's like CV generation or something, yeah.
So tell, I mean, you showed us already the thing that the new pedal format with the preamp. Did you also, you mentioned the one that you're doing with Maris, the
Yeah, I don't have
reverb,
one
right?
now, but
So tell us a little bit about that collaboration and how that came about, and you know what that pedal is about.
Definitely, yes. That goes back a ways. Terry from Maris and Joel have been buddies for some time, you know, just big fans of each other's work. And we've been talking with them for a long time about trying to do some sort of collaboration. Like right when we started doing collaborations, we we're like, man, we should do something with Maris. It'd be really awesome.
Nice.
But it was, you know, they were really busy and we were really busy. And it was always just kind of like another thing where just trying to find the right moment to jump on something. And we're all big, like Harold Budd fans and like Brian Eno fans. So like we always, you know, we wanted something that could kind of like encapsulate that, and really big fans of like the Lexicon style stuff. We wanted to try and figure out a way to make a cool Lexicon style reverb, you know, with like frequency dependent reverb time and adding new features to it, and you know, just putting our spin on it. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, that's from NAMM this last year.
Yeah, so I posted that because I was impressed with what I heard, and it just looks good. It's a handsome pedal. It's
Thank
really,
you.
really
Yeah.
dope.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. It's once the preamp's done, you know, in a few weeks, it'll be the next thing that we're cooking along on. So hopefully it's not too long before we have that out in the world too.
Yeah, I think we're shooting for like a late summer, early fall on that. Because yeah, like once we're done with the Automaton preamp, we kind of have the platform figured out then, and we can just kind of roll on new designs from there.
Totally.
Nice. And so this is all the motorized fader and stuff, and so you can kind of automate all the different things on it.
Totally.
Man, the reverb is so lush. Shonda, you should have saw us. I mean, we were all at NAMM together, but there was like me and probably 3 or 4 other people from the crew, and we were just kind of hovering over this thing, like, listen, push that knob.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I missed this. I'm like, I need this thing.
That's gonna be our first stereo pedal as well. Oh, Zach's got the motorized faders going on the preamp here.
Let me pull you up here, Zach, and put you so people can
Yeah,
when you because that was a big thing with our you know, like our classic line. When you recall a preset, there isn't really a visual feedback, you know, as to like if you save the preset a number of years ago or however long, you might not remember it. So this kind of idea came from Joel wanting to have a very tactile and visual way to recall presets, and it's just, you know, it's fun and it catches the eye. And you know, like if you use external, you know, like CV or MIDI, you can modulate parameters and stuff, and the faders move, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
Feedback on stuff.
Really, I thought it was really cool, and I think that format is really dope for what you said, because you get, you know, firstly, it's very tactile, and you kind of feel like it's a control surface. It feels more like a control surface than a pedal,
Right?
And it kind of goes into that place where like Mogafogers were.
Totally.
You know what I mean? And so you feel like this is something substantial that you have. And I can easily see people, and it almost harkens a little bit to like, you know, this is not just for guitars. Because I think some people that don't realize, they'll look at some of these guitar pedals and think like, well, I don't play guitar. But more and more today, you start to get people that play other instruments that are using all these pedals. But that format kind of speaks to like, this is an effects pedal.
Sure, totally.
Not a guitar pedal, but it can be used as, you know what I mean? It kind of transcends that stuff.
Right, and yeah, and that the Reaver will be our first stereo pedal as well. So we're definitely excited about that as well.
Oh yeah, nice, very nice.
We'll set the stereo pedals, please. Yes.
Yeah, we hear it a lot, definitely.
I just want to check in with everybody that's out there in the chat, see how they're doing. If they have any questions for the guys while we have them on here, please just drop them in the chat there so we can get your questions answered.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out, everyone.
No.
Thanks for coming on too.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Like I said, I've been watching videos. I've been watching videos on that Mood, and yeah, Corey told me about that pedal a while ago, and I'm like, yeah.
Really dope. Really dope. Yeah, and I love that again about that new format. I could easily see like putting that next to. See, I run a send return out of a little mixer that I have in my rack.
Sure.
And being able to use something like that across,
Totally.
you know what I mean? The whole tower is just amazing. Dope
That's
stuff.
awesome.
And it won't get it won't get shoved back to the back and moved around. It'll be like front and center.
Right.
You know.
With Blooper and Mood, we made sure to build in dry kill into both of them, so you can put them in effect sends and have it be
Yes.
just the signal coming through and all that.
Nice.
Nice.
Totally.
Well, I know a couple things that I got on my list here.
Let's see. I'm waiting for the question to pop up here in the chat. Oh, I'm going to throw it up there. How do you see the Blooper versus the Mood fitting into workflows, difference in how it is meant to apply?
Yeah, for sure. So I think with Blooper, I see it as starting intentionally and then progressing to things that are unintentional. And then Mood, I see it starting unintentionally and then progressing into something that becomes more like stable. So like with Blooper, what I mean is like you're able to record in a specific length of time that you want the loop to be. And then from there, you can, add modifiers to change the speed of it, chop different sections up and rearrange them. You can drop sections from your loop, add more layers to it. And it becomes this thing that's, you didn't start out thinking about how you're going to get there, but it just developed in that way. Where with Mood, you're starting with either the spatial effect or the micro looper. And with the micro looper, it is set to specific lengths for how long the loop can be. So if you're recording stuff into it, it's just going to sit within that loop length. And, sometimes you're going to have a little bit extra or you're going to get cut off. And then that's going to make you react in whatever way it does on, working with the other channel and how you stack the effects into each other. So, it's just like different process.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'd say Blooper is definitely more of like a dedicated looper. If you're looking to like, it can do all the things that any standard looper can do. It's very specific. It's pristine. It's clear. You have all these like redo, undo options. Whereas I think where Mood shines is that the looper is always listening with Mood. So it kind of harkens back to those old kind of like weird glitchy style loopers where it's kind of meant to be unpredictable. There's no overdubbing. It's like you just grab kind of like a snapshot of a moment and then go from there. Whereas with Blooper, it's like, okay, I have an idea. I'm going to set this down. Like with the layers and with the ability to do entirely different like audio kind of files essentially on each layer, you can build like an entire song just on Blooper. Whereas with Mood, it's really not meant to do that kind of like dedicated, like straightforward looping. It's more of just kind of, like a moment of whatever you've been hearing played back to you in a way that you might not necessarily expect.
Yeah.
So in that case, they complement each other pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's like, we were actually before this even talking about like, we'll get it a lot, like what's kind of like the best way to do it if you want to have Mood before Blooper or after Blooper or whatever. And it's different for everybody and whatever they want to do, but I personally like to have Mood after Blooper so that I can just kind of grab like a snapshot of whatever my core loop is and then just kind of make like weird reflections of it within Mood. I
changed it around 3 times before we played. I like Mood before Blooper, Mood after Blooper.
Right, yeah. So yeah, that's what we were just saying. Yeah, I prefer Mood after Blooper just because then you can kind of like you can keep your core loop with Blooper stable and repeating, and then do these weird kind of like afterthoughts with Mood.
I prefer Blooper next to Mood.
Oh, in parallel.
In parallel.
Option 3.
You can set Blooper up as a delay, and then you can latch onto the delay, have that be a loop. Then you can have, a loop and delay on Mood. You can have a micro loop on Mood, and then you're fading them in and out of each other. That's
nice.
Very cool. So I have 2 questions actually. So going back to Blooper, when you're saying the layers, you may have said this before, but I don't think I heard you. How many layers total? And when you're turning the knob, is there some sort of
indicator
or something? Yes.
Yeah. So there
count or
definitely. So there is an indicator. It's not like a notched knob because it changes depending on where or how many layers you have recorded. So like if you have 2 layers recorded, it's at the noon point where the LEDs will turn green if you bring in a layer, or they'll turn red if you take out a layer. But then if you have 4 layers recorded, it'll be like set up in quarters of the knob, or 5, it'll be slightly smaller increments, and then all the way up to 8 is the max layer number.
Okay.
Yeah, 8 layers of undo and redo. So it'll remember, and you can go all the way back and fade through them.
One thing I realized recently, though, is that we don't have it documented anywhere, which is really dumb of us, is that the 8th layer is it's an 8th layer and then the remaining memory buffer. So like we couldn't make another layer. Like we didn't have enough memory, but we had all this leftover stuff. So we added that into the 8th layer, and that's like a super layer. So you have like 8. The 8th layer can record I think 10 or 15 times on top of that 8th layer, and then when you undo from that point, it just goes back to the 7th layer instead of going back to your like 14th loop or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of confusing, and maybe that's why we didn't like say it. But basically, like on the 8th layer,
super cool Easter egg, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Nice.
But it's 8 layers of undo and redo.
So that brings me to something too, because I kind of think I feel like the more I found out about different pedals, the more I'm like, yo, the pedal manufacturers and community is just as wild as the Eurorack community when it comes to ideas. And I think I'm kind of like, a lot of times I'm like, some of these guys really think almost like Eurorack makers.
Totally.
You know what I mean? It's kind of taking these bits of ideas and making do something really well with a bunch of little Easter eggs and stuff in there. But then the size and format and the controls and stuff, and the different parameters, right? But I always figure I could imagine you run into issues with like, okay, it's this size, it does this stuff. Well, it does this thing, but with all this stuff along with, right? But I always wonder, do you run into issues about making the interface intuitive? And I almost feel like with Blooper, as I was watching the episodes, Blooper kind of had that thing. How do we make this intuitive and still make it very feature rich? Is that like a huge thing? I could imagine you run into that a lot.
Absolutely, and that kind of harkens back to the conversation that we had about the buttons, like the modifier buttons for Blooper. It was just complicated for us to have a mode dedicated to modifiers, and like having something that was intuitive in the way that you push a modifier button to turn a modifier on, like that just makes sense, and that ended up forcing us to have a change in hardware as far as like adding those buttons, but it was necessary, and it was something that we thought needed to happen in order for the pedal to be usable, really. So it's definitely something we think about.
And so in that case, you were thinking like, oh, was it like hard to know what mode you were in when you were going to modifier mode? And so that makes sense then if that's the case, because then at this point you don't have to think about that. You press a button, it just is.
Right.
Yeah. So it ended up being like you'd go, instead of it being like additive recording or normal recording, it would just be always an additive, and then normal would be modifier mode. So that would be, you'd go to that, and then left foot switch would turn on modifier A, right foot switch would turn on modifier B. It was weird,
but then you couldn't loop in modifier mode.
So you'd have to switch
to kind of get out of that mode.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys would have got a lot of complaints about that.
We were like abandoned.
Twitter would have tore you guys up about that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Frag-em.
Yeah. And that's like a big thing that was kind of crucial for Blooper, was that we were just talking to a lot of beta testers, and Knobs was in on it the whole time. It was just kind of like figuring out what worked and what didn't work, and so it was nice to kind of have all that feedback and have that long process, because it really benefited the product in the end.
Nice. Good job.
Thank you.
So I just want to say thank you to everyone hanging out with us tonight. And do you guys have anything else that you want to kind of share with everyone out there listening right now before we get to your performance and to play us out?
I guess, if you are interested in any of the stuff that we've talked about tonight, feel free to hit us up on Instagram. Feel free to check out our website, chaseblissaudio.com. We're always posting updates on our Instagram as far as what we're working on, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions about anything. Perfect Circuit has got all of our pedals in stock, so feel free to hit them up.
We also, if you do have Blooper or if you have questions, we have like a dedicated subreddit. It's r/Blooper, where a lot of people are in there. It's a really good community where people are just kind of talking and sharing and helping each other. We're also always working on updating Blooper. It's the first pedal that we've done where you can just plug in like a USB and then update firmware remotely. So we're actually working on making new modifiers. We're going to be continuing to kind of support Blooper for the next foreseeable future. So if you go to that Blooper subreddit, we're actually having like votes on different modifiers and kind of continuing that aspect of having as much like feedback and integration of users as possible.
r/Blooper.
r/Blooper.
I'm hanging out there all the time. You can ask me questions anytime you want.
Very cool.
Very good. And I just gotta say before you go out, I have a couple favorites in every sort of category: Euro rack, synthesizers, drum machines, whatever. And I gotta say, you guys and so Chase Bliss and Red Panda, my two favorites.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Red Panda.
Definitely dope stuff.
Thank you
If
so much.
anybody's looking to get into pedals, get Chase Bliss and Red Panda. Just look at those few things. They got a few gems in that you can kind of outfit a whole pedal board with and have the most original stuff for everybody.
Some granular madness happening there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us and sharing your story. And it was really cool to hear. So are you guys ready to kind of play us out?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks again for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Really good time.
Perfect Circuit.
Good talking to you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
While they're getting ready to go to play us a little something, I just want to let everyone in the chat to say thank you for tuning in with us. And next week we do have Noise Engineering is going to be with us, so that's going to be another good night of friends and good and dope modules. So yes.
And if I could say as well, on typically I don't do this, but I want to be able to tell you guys to share with you if you dig what we're doing. Stop by BBoyTech Report channel on Saturday at noon Pacific. We'll be interviewing Dave Rossum, Mr. Emu, Mr. SP1200 himself. So it'll be a live stream. Should be fun. So yeah.
Very cool. All right. So Zach and Tyler, I'm going to let you take it from here.